Patrick Henningsen talks on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Now I want to say this, and I'm going to say it just once.
This is today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're still in hour number one of this live broadcast. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. Thank you for rejoining us. And as I said before the break, the top story right now in the world, well, it has to be the top story in the world. I think we're very much on the precipice of potentially of a third world war. I don't say that lightly, and I know this is some alternative pundits hyperbolically announce this on a weekly basis for the last 10 years. I won't mention any names, but actually this is the real deal. We are looking at a situation, according to U.S. sources, that Iran might hit multiple Israeli targets within the next 24 to 48 hours. What does this mean? This is a level of potential conflict here that will almost certainly drag in the major powers alongside Israel, their ally. I'm talking about the United States of America, Great Britain, etc. This is going to put the whole world on absolute war footing if this happens. The question is, can it be averted? Is it possible to de-escalate? I want to point to our next guest right now. She has just penned an excellent op-ed for Al Mayadeen, which is a fantastic Middle East news site. And the title of her article, which is on this very topic, Iran consulate bombing, Israel's act of desperation. Maram Susli, aka Syrian Girl, is joining us on the live link right now. Syrian Girl, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for that excellent introduction as well. Yes, Al Mayadeen is a Lebanese satellite TV and written news website, and I'm very proud to have written for them.
No, it's an excellent piece, but also the seriousness of this can't be underestimated, as you well know. I know that you've also been running a massive public forum on X Twitter Spaces in the early hours of this morning, so we appreciate the fact that you're available for us for this segment, Syrian Girl. What do you make of this situation right now? This is kind of new territory. We haven't been here before. The risks are huge. The ramifications are far-reaching. What do you make of this current impasse right now this weekend?
I think you described it very accurately. In fact, it is possibly bringing us to the brink of World War III. And the mechanism by which this could happen is that, Israel does have nukes. We know that they are unhinged in their activity in the last 6 months has shown that they're not really a rational actor. So, and it's first of all, an attack on them could trigger a nuclear response and then hence a nuclear war. We know they have the Samson option. They could target multiple targets around the world. And as a result, nukes are flying. Suddenly, everyone's nukes are flying. The other mechanism by which this could happen is slower than that. The American Zionist lobby is going to drag the US into war. I believe the UK may be involved as well. And, this war would certainly not necessarily save Israel either, because, they will attack Iran navally by the air, but Iran will still be able to target Israel, and the population of Iran outnumbers Israel times 10. They have far more capabilities, and they can definitely, wipe Israel off the map, as they say, no matter what the United States does. So, at the same time, Iran is an ally of Russia and China, and they would definitely, at the moment, the Russian soldiers are near the Golan Heights. They have reinforced that area, and that is also territory that's been occupied by Israel within Syria. So, as well as the fact that the US is illegally occupying Syria as well. So Russia could certainly be dragged into this war if the United States goes in too.
So when we talk about militaries, it's accepted by many people here in America Syrian Girl, that Israel has the most powerful military in the Middle East, bar none. That Iran is really a ramshackle, sort of second-rate regional power. But is that really the case? And what about Iran's missile capabilities? Do they have intermediate range and hypersonic missile capabilities? And if so, what does that mean in terms of bypassing Israelis' missile defense array and their Iron Dome, etc.? Strategically, what can you tell us about this?
Well, they have several weapons options they can use. They have the, as you called it, the hypersonic missiles. They're ballistic missiles. They basically go up into the stratosphere and they come down with kinetic force onto the target. These were used on the US military base in Iraq, the Al-Assad Air Base, in 2021 as a response to Soleimani's assassination. And these missiles would certainly bypass the Iron Dome simply because the speed and the kinetic force that they have, the Iron Dome wouldn't be able to stop them. Second form of missile that they can use are cruise missiles, and these actually have AI that can dodge the air defense systems of the Israelis. And finally, they have drones. They have the Shahid drones, which again can be are completely maneuverable and can dodge the Iron Dome system, and as well as overwhelm it. And of course, Iran is not alone. It's going to be coordinating with the resistance axis, and so they can launch, as Hezbollah has done in the last hour, consecutive missile volleys to overwhelm the Iron Dome at the same time. So all of these options are available, and this is not like 15 years ago, when maybe you could say that Israel is more powerful than Iran. Iran has developed its own air defense capabilities, its own offensive capabilities, to the point where even the Russians are relying on that technology to fight a war in Ukraine. So really, Iran is not is strong navally, and with the missile systems, and now with the drones, more so than Israel.
So this is interesting because this is the problem that Ukraine is having. They've depleted their Patriot missile batteries, which are supplied by the United States. Likewise, Israel's defense systems are supplied. The munitions are supplied by the United States. And so you said in the last hour or so, last couple of hours, Hezbollah sent a volley into Israel. So they could, in theory, do this between the various resistance axis members, including Hamas, to deplete or to sort of, drain the Iron Dome of its munitions, and therefore create an open target, really, for the Iranians at a time of their choosing. Is this a viable scenario?
Well, I think so, and one must remember that every one of those missiles in the Iron Dome costs something about $60,000 to $70,000 for the U.S. taxpayer. And it is the U.S. taxpayer that's footing the bill for the Iron Dome, which is interesting because the U.S. doesn't have its own Iron Dome system. Certainly, the U.S. soldiers that are stationed in the Middle East aren't being protected by this Iron Dome. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish, Syrian Girl.
Well, just in finality, it certainly seems that Iran is bound to retaliate at this point. If you read the geopolitical atmosphere, it seems like it is inevitable, and so one would think that overwhelming the Iron Dome system would have to be one of the things that Iran does.
So what Israel did here, what started this particular round of hostilities, was Israel hitting an Iranian embassy in Damascus, killing two Iranian high-ranking generals, in fact, and senior people. And that's a diplomatic facility. It's a total contravention of international treaties and international law. So Israel started this particular round of hostilities. But just the fact that the United States is lobbying to Iran to show restraint in terms of hitting targets in Israel, etc., and everybody's now stressed out and worried about this. Doesn't this in itself show that Iran has a tremendous amount of leverage? Why I'm saying this, Syrian Girl, is if Iran makes a back channel agreement to not strike Israel, what would Iran want in return as a quid pro quo? A ceasefire in Gaza? Or would we be into some kind of protracted chess game of negotiations, which, let's face it, you wouldn't want to be playing that game with Israel because, quite frankly, in the past, they don't play by the rules when it comes to such negotiations. But what about Iran's leverage? What would they want in return if they were to show restraint?
Well, here's the interesting thing. Sometimes such a thing happens just before negotiations take place in order to weaken the position of the other party. So perhaps the strategic thinking was you attack Iran in a brazen way. This intimidates Iran, and so when they come to the table for negotiations, they're gonna take a weaker deal. And this sort of thing happened while Iran, the United States is dangling a few concessions at Iran. With Egypt, they're trying to make a treaty with Hamas in terms of a ceasefire, but a temporary ceasefire with 40 hostages or prisoners of war exchanged for the hostages of Palestinians that Israel is holding. So that was floated. Also, they would try to make some concessions to the Yemeni forces, the Houthis or Ansarullah. That is their other alternative, more official name. So, but neither of those things succeeded, and so the ceasefire has to be permanent. Maybe that might prevent a retaliation by Iran, but the problem that the U.S. is going to face is the fact that the resistance axis is not under complete control of Iran. They have also their own autonomous voices. So even if they were to strike a deal with one faction of the axis, that's not going to necessarily stop the Iranians from looking out for their own interests. And what they attacked is as you said, Iran's diplomatic facility, and that is an act of war. And without answering to that, no matter what they dangle in front of the resistance axis, without answering to that, Iran is going to immediately be in a weaker position. So they've sort of, and then maybe on purpose or inadvertently, sort of forced Iran's hand to come forward and join the resistance axis in its attacks on Israel.
Sorry about that. A connection issue here on the cable end. So if that's the case, we might be in for a surprise or two, Syrian Girl, in the coming weeks. And who knows where this is going to end in terms of the ladder of escalation. And this is something that a lot of people are concerned about. What about, lastly, before we break, and we thank you for your time, what about the U.S. intervening at the last minute in order to restrain Israel if Iran decides to actually retaliate and that happens? Then would that wake up the United States? I mean, I can't imagine a situation where the U.S. would want to see a full-scale war in the region where they get dragged in, especially during an election year. Your final thoughts on this?
Well, clearly the United States is planning or seeing that Iran has chosen to retaliate because, if you recall, just prior to Soleimani's retaliation for Soleimani's death, Trump was, first of all, threatening Iran to destroy their heritage sites. At the same time, he was using all diplomatic means to outreach to Iran, including getting a diplomatic group from Switzerland to try to convince them not to retaliate. Now, something similar happened recently with Blinken appealing to China to try to get them to request Iran not to retaliate. So there's a certain level of desperation there. And with the United States saying that they're fully committed to Israel, and UK jumping in as well, you have to tend to believe that the US is being begrudgingly dragged into a war that they don't want, because this war is going to be extremely unpopular with Biden's voting base. And this is an election year. So this might be the end of his presidency, especially because most Democrats are pro-Palestinian. in spite of their leaders not being pro-Palestinian. So, and also the Republican side as well are also growing tired of Israel. The GOP, Israel is also losing the GOP. So I just think that the United States is in a very precarious position. However, with the power of the Zionist lobby being as it is, I'm afraid that it's probably likely that the US will be dragged into that war. But as a result of that, what's going to happen is, they're not going to be able to save Israel from the war if it expands. They're not going to be able to stop Iran from wreaking havoc on Zionist entity, but also their U.S. soldiers who are now stationed in Syria and Iraq and Jordan, those soldiers their lives are gonna be under threat, and there's gonna be devastation because if the U.S. attacks Iran, what happened the last time the U.S. attacked Iran? Iran attacks the U.S., and that's what's going to happen.
That's right. And the last time Iran hit the U.S. base, the U.S. did not respond when they hit the al-Assad air base in Iraq. They didn't respond. They couldn't respond. So what makes them think they're in a better strategic position now than they were before? They're probably not. And that's the reality. And I think that's going to factor in Washington as well. It's going to be very interesting. This is an extremely concerning period right now. We really appreciate you joining us, Syrian Girl, and your input, as always, extremely valuable. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
There she goes, ladies and gentlemen. That is Syrian Girl. Follow her on X, Twitter, Partisan Girl, @Partisan Girl, and also watch for her alerts on X Spaces. She is hosting some of the best geopolitical spaces right now on that platform. So you definitely want to be following her and also spread the word. Let's take a break right now. We're going to connect our next guest, award-winning journalist from Yemen, Youssef Mauri, is going to join us in just a few minutes. So we'll continue this conversation about the geopolitics, the tension rising in the Middle East. I'm Patrick Henningsen. We'll be right back.
This is the Patrick Henningsen Show on TNT Radio.
Now I want to say this, and I'm going to say it just once.
This is today's News Talk Radio, TNT.